If there's any mistake, your career will be over. That warning, cold and sharp as a scalpel, wasn't an empty threat. It was the stark truth, echoing through the taut operating room. In the center of the room, on the surgical table, lay a Navy SEAL, 40 bullets lodged in his body. Sarah's decision in this moment would determine not only the soldier's future, but also the life and career she had meticulously built. The pungent smell of antiseptic, usually a source of comfort for nurse Sarah Jenkins, now felt like a suffocating shroud. Sarah, a seasoned nurse with 15 years of experience, always maintained her composure. Even when facing controlled chaos, she moved with the practiced grace of a master professional. Her hands, calloused from countless insertions and wound dressings, remained steady. Her mind was a finely tuned instrument for rapid triage and assessment. She had always thrived in high-stakes environments where every second was precious and every decision meant the difference between life and death. Tonight, however, was different. A palpable tension had settled in, starting with hushed conversations. Rumors of a priority case had circulated for hours, followed by the arrival of grim-faced men in dark suits. Their presence was a silent, unsettling declaration of the situation's gravity. Then the doors burst open. A gurney was swiftly wheeled in by 2 medics, trailed by a group of military personnel. The patient, a man in his mid-30s, pale and gaunt, lay there, his body a horrifying canvas of blood-soaked bandages and lacerations. His tattered uniform bore the insignia of a Navy SEAL, but it was the sheer number of his wounds that made every medical professional in the room hold their breath. Multiple gunshot trauma, high-velocity impact, a voice rang out, estimated 40 bullet wounds. Major Hayes, United States Navy SEAL, one of the military escorts, barked, his voice choked with urgency. He's been stabilized, but he's very fragile. Massive blood loss, 40 bullet wounds. Sarah's mind reeled. It wasn't a typo or an exaggeration. As the emergency team swarmed around the gurney, cutting away the shredded uniform, the horrifying truth became starkly apparent. His torso, arms, and legs were riddled with bullet wounds, some neat and small, others ragged and tearing. It looked as if he had been caught in a hailstorm of gunfire. Miraculously, none of the injuries seemed to have directly struck a major organ, but the sheer number of wounds meant massive internal bleeding and an immense risk of infection. Dr. Ariston Thorne, the lead trauma surgeon, known for his calm under pressure, felt a ripple of unease. My God, 40 wounds, get him to surgery immediately. Massive transfusion protocol. Full body scan, now. We need to locate every single projectile. The next few hours were a blur of frantic activity. Major Hayes's vitals flickered precariously, his once powerful physique now a shattered ghost of itself. The scans confirmed the nightmare. Dozens of bullets lodged throughout his body, some just under the skin, others deeper, dangerously close to arteries, nerves, and bone. Removing them all would be an agonizingly meticulous and high-risk process. We need to prioritize, Dr. Thorne said, his brow furrowed as he examined the scans. Remove the most critical ones first. Stabilize him. We can't go digging for every single fragment right now. He won't survive that long on the table. Sarah, who had meticulously cleaned and catalogued every visible wound, felt a cold dread. "Doctor, excuse me for interrupting," she interjected, her voice firm. "If we leave any bullets in, even the superficial ones, the risk of infection, sepsis, and long-term complications is immense, especially with the amount of foreign material already introduced into his body. This isn't just about survival. This is about his future, his quality of life." Dr. Thorne sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Nurse Jenkins, I understand your concern, but we're talking about a patient whose body has been turned into a sieve. Our priority is to keep him alive. We'll remove the life-threatening projectiles, close him up, and then deal with the rest in subsequent surgeries once he's stronger." "But how can he get stronger if he's fighting off 40 potential infection sites?" Sarah countered, her voice rising slightly. She had seen too many patients suffer complications from seemingly minor, retained fragments. These aren't just bullets, they're foreign objects carrying whatever filth they picked up. Every single one is a ticking time bomb. Here's the translated text, crafted for a native English speaker, retaining the original meaning and intensity. The military escorts, standing silently in the corner, stirred slightly, their eyes fixed on Sarah. They understood the value of their man. "Nurse, that's the surgeon's decision," Dr. Thorne said, his voice laced with impatience. "We don't have time for a leisurely surgery. We need to act now." But Sarah had a vision. Years of assisting in complex trauma surgeries had given her an intuitive understanding of anatomy, a keen surgical eye, and a nurse's meticulousness. She knew, with absolute certainty, that leaving any bullets behind was a slow, agonizing death sentence. She also knew that stringent hospital protocols, while designed for efficiency and liability reduction, often stifled the kind of patient-centered care that was truly needed. Dr. Thorne stared, his eyes wide with surprise. What Sarah was proposing was audacious, almost insubordinate. Nurses didn't perform such invasive procedures, especially not without direct orders, constant supervision, and certainly not on a patient with such a top-secret file. The liability was immense. Yet, he also saw the unshakable conviction in her eyes, the fierce determination, the desperation that only true devotion could forge. He had seen Sarah work miracles before. Her instincts were often sharper than his, and time was rapidly running out. "You're insane, Jenkins," he muttered, but there was another, desperate flicker of hope in his gaze. "If there's any mistake, your career will be over." "If we don't do this, he'll be over," Sarah retorted, her eyes unwavering, "and so will my conscience." A long, tense moment stretched between them. The military personnel watched, their faces unreadable. Finally, Dr. Thorne let out a labored breath. "All right, Jenkins, you have 15 minutes. If you can't make significant progress on the superficial wounds, we stop." And this never happened. Sarah wasted no time. She snatched up a small pair of forceps, a scalpel, and the suction tool, beginning her work with impossible precision amidst the chaos. Her movements were fluid, almost surgical. She understood the human body intimately, not just from books, but from countless times seeing deep into the fragility of flesh and bone after years of hands-on experience. She worked with intense focus, her brow furrowed, her breathing shallow. She carefully located, incised, and extracted each bullet, each one dropping with a faint clink into a sterile bowl. Dr. Thorne, initially skeptical, watched Sarah with growing astonishment. She was a whirlwind of energy and will, utterly absorbed. She anticipated his needs, handing him instruments before he even asked, her eyes darting across the monitors, her voice calm as she read out vitals. 26, 31, vitals stable. A technician called out. "Blood pressure is coming up." "Good," Sarah murmured, her voice calm but tight with tension. They worked in a gruesome yet strangely harmonious dance between life and death. Hours bled into one another, 12, 14, then 16 hours. Surgical teams rotated in and out, but Sarah remained, fueled by adrenaline and fierce determination. Her back ached, her eyes burned, but she refused to give up. By the time the sun began to peek through the hospital windows, painting the sky in bruised purples and oranges, it was done. Every single bullet, all 40 of them, lay in the sterile bowl, a grim collection of lead and copper. Major Hayes, though still critical, was stable. His vitals were stronger than they had been in days. He had survived. Sarah stumbled out of the operating room, exhausted but triumphant. She had done it. She had saved him. The hallway lights flickered above her like weary stars. Staff members she barely knew stared at her as she passed. Her triumph was short-lived. Sarah had barely an hour of rest. She hadn't even changed out of her scrubs. The blood had dried, a testament to the battle she'd faced and the miracle she'd helped bring to fruition. Then, she heard the loudspeaker call her name. "Nurse Jenkins, Chief of Staff Harrison would like to see you immediately." The voice was cold, uninflected, unlike the usual cheerful administrative staff. Still, she complied. As she walked down the sterile hallway, past bulletin boards and posters promoting excellence in care, her steps slowed. A cold dread crept up her spine. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. She reached the glass doors of the administrative office and pushed them open. Waiting inside were 2 uniformed security guards. Chief of Staff Harrison, the hospital administrator, a man who navigated the world by policy, budget, and public relations, sat behind a gleaming mahogany desk. His face was a mask of stern disapproval. Beside him was the hospital's head legal counsel, a woman with a perpetually pursed mouth. "Nurse Jenkins," Harrison began, his voice frigid, devoid of any warmth or acknowledgement of her heroic efforts. We have received a full report regarding Major Hayes's surgery. While we acknowledge the patient's improved condition, we are gravely concerned about your unauthorized actions. His voice softened slightly. You did what you believed was right, but it placed the hospital in a precarious legal position. We are a civilian facility. We are not beholden to the military. There was no signed consent, no waiver, no authorization. Sarah felt a chill. Sir, I saved his life. Dr. Thorne was overwhelmed. We had to act. Every minute counted. And you did, Beckman conceded. But that doesn't change the risk you created. Risk. Not a life, not bravery, not ethics, just risk. You performed surgical procedures. Nurse Jenkins, the legal counsel, interjected, her voice sharp. Those procedures fall squarely within the purview of a licensed surgeon. You overstepped your authority, exposing this hospital to immense liability. What if something had gone wrong? What if you had nicked an artery? What if the patient had died under your unauthorized care? But he didn't die, Sarah shot back, her voice rising. He lived because I did what needed to be done, because I saw what was necessary. Harrison leaned forward, his eyes narrowed. Your intentions, however noble, do not supersede protocol. Nurse, this hospital operates under strict guidelines for a reason. Your actions were a blatant disregard. They were reckless and dangerous. Reckless, Sarah scoffed, a bitter laugh escaping her lips. You think leaving 40 bullets in a man's body is less reckless, or waiting for another surgery, risking sepsis, is safer. I made a clinical decision based on experience, based on what was best for the patient. Your employment at St. Jude's Medical Center is terminated, Harrison stated, his voice flat, devoid of emotion. Your final paycheck will be mailed. You will be escorted off the premises. Please return your badge and any hospital property. Sarah stared at him, disbelief mingling with a rising fury. You're firing me for saving a life, for doing my job and then some, for violating hospital policy and endangering our institution, the legal counsel corrected her coldly. You are a liability, Nurse Jenkins. The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. Her world, centered around the rhythm of the ER, the camaraderie of her colleagues, the satisfaction of healing, crumbled. She was escorted out, her scrubs still smelling of antiseptic and blood, her mind reeling. The injustice was a burning ember in her chest. She had given and risked everything, only to be cast aside. Reaching the staff entrance, Sarah's cheeks burned with humiliation. The metal door hissed open, and she stepped out into the harsh morning sunlight. Alone, she stood by her car for a moment, unmoving. Her hands clenched her blood-stained scrubs, her knees weak. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. She had saved a life, and they had fired her for it. She got into the driver's seat, staring at the steering wheel. Around her, the hospital loomed, a building she had once considered a second home, now looking like a silent fortress. Her phone buzzed. A text from a fellow nurse. I'm so sorry. We know what you did. We're proud of you. Another buzz. You don't deserve this. They're just scared. It's just fear. But fear wouldn't help her now. Fear hadn't stepped into that trauma room. Courage had. And courage was now out of a job. The nursing board would likely investigate. Her license could be in jeopardy. Her career, her calling, her identity, all seemed to be slipping away. She sat in her small apartment, the silence deafening, the weight of unemployment pressing down. She had saved a man's life, and it had cost her everything. The next morning, Sarah's phone remained silent. No messages, no apologies, no thanks. Not even from the man she had saved, whoever he was. Perhaps he didn't know, or the military had whisked him away under wraps. She would never know. But her memory knew. She remembered his blood-soaked scrubs, the weight on the gurney, the faint pulse beneath her gloves, and the moment he came back to life. That moment was supposed to mean something, to change something. Instead, it had taken everything from her. Sarah sat on her porch, wrapped in an old navy hoodie, her knees drawn up. She sipped at her bland, lukewarm coffee, more out of ritual than comfort. The neighborhood was its usual quiet self, punctuated by the distant hum of a lawnmower and the laughter of children. Birds chirped, the wind rustled the leaves. The world kept turning. No one knew that in this apartment, a nurse had sacrificed her entire career for an unknown soldier. The world hadn't stopped for her, not even paused. Her eyes stung, not from tears, but from the raw indignity of being unacknowledged, ununderstood, unvindicated. And then the strange thing happened. A deep rumbling vibrated through the sky like distant thunder. At first, Sarah didn't think much of it. Perhaps a storm was brewing, but the sound didn't dissipate. It grew louder, sharper, rhythmic. It was the beat of helicopter blades. She rose slowly, placing her cup on the porch railing. Her pulse quickened. The sound grew closer, deep and powerful, as if the very air was trembling. Then she saw them. One helicopter, then another. Military, massive, their dull black underbellies tore through the clear blue sky. They weren't just passing over, they were descending directly above her apartment complex. Sarah's heart pounded against her ribs. She took a step back, confused, afraid. A dozen thoughts flooded her mind. Were they looking for someone? Was this a drill? Were they in danger? Doors along the street flung open. Neighbors stepped out, some filming, some shielding their eyes from the prop wash as the first helicopter hovered, then lowered itself directly over the parking lot. The second one winged alongside, circling once before slowing and settling. Dust billowed, trees bent, car alarms shrieked. The entire neighborhood froze in astonishment. Sarah stood on her porch, her hand slightly raised against the wind, her hair whipping around her face. Her chest rose and fell rapidly, her breath caught between wonder and fear. The helicopter doors slid open, and figures disembarked, their heavy boots hitting the pavement. Tactical uniforms, dark glasses, rigid postures, but the man in the center was the focus. Tall, decorated, self-assured, a Navy commander with silver eagles glinting on his collar. His eyes found Sarah immediately, even from a distance, and he began to walk toward her. She didn't move, even as her neighbors whispered and gasped, even as a little girl pointed from across the street. The commander stopped at the foot of her porch stairs. He removed his sunglasses, revealing direct, humane blue eyes. Sarah Cross, his voice cut through the silence like a blade. She nodded slowly. Yes. Then, to everyone's astonishment, he took a step back and saluted her. Sarah blinked, unsure if she was dreaming. "You saved one of our own," he stated firmly. "And we never forget that." His gaze was unwavering. "We understand that you've been terminated from Street Jude's. We are here to rectify a grave injustice." He then stepped aside, revealing a third person, a woman in a crisp Navy uniform, whose rank insignia indicated she was a high-ranking medical officer. "Nurse Jenkins," Major Hayes said, his voice hoarse but clear. "I wanted to come here myself. They told me what you did. They told me you defied orders, that you risked everything to get every single fragment out of me. They said you saved my life, not just for now, but for the future." He paused, a flicker of emotion in his eyes. "I owe you everything." She was speechless, her throat tight with emotion. Her hands trembled as she reached for the envelope. As her fingers touched it, the commander met her gaze. "We found you," he said, reaching into the breast pocket of his uniform and producing a crisp, formal, sealed white envelope. Gasps rippled through the gathered neighbors. Phones were raised, cameras clicked. But in that moment, none of it mattered to Sarah. The world faded as she carefully tore open the envelope. Inside was a naval-stamped letter, formal, official, filled with gratitude, and beneath it, a check for $100,000. She stared, stunned. I don't understand," she whispered. The commander's expression softened. "You acted without hesitation. You saved the life of a high-value operative." At that moment, Admiral Thorne stepped forward. "Nurse Jenkins, Major Hayes is not just a highly skilled SEAL. He is a critical national security asset, possessing intelligence that, if compromised, could have devastating global ramifications. His survival and full recovery were paramount. Your actions, though outside the purview of civilian hospital protocol, were nothing short of heroic. You displayed unparalleled skill, courage, and dedication." General Miller added, "We have our own medical intelligence. Nurse Jenkins, we knew the full extent of Major Hayes's injuries. We knew the prognosis from the initial medical teams, and we knew that without intervention, without your refusal to compromise, Major Hayes would not be standing, or rather, sitting, here today." Sarah felt a wave of dizzying relief. They knew, they understood. Street Judes had acted within their policies, however rigid they were. Admiral Thorne continued, his voice softening slightly. But their policies do not dictate our gratitude or our recognition of true value. We are here to offer you a position, Nurse Jenkins, that we believe is more befitting of your extraordinary talents. He gestured to the Navy medical officer. This is Captain Eleanor Vance, Chief Medical Officer for Naval Special Warfare Command. She has reviewed your file, your work history, and the full details of Major Hayes's surgery. She believes your unique combination of surgical precision, intuitive diagnostic ability, and relentless dedication makes you an invaluable asset. Captain Vance stepped forward, her eyes warm. Nurse Jenkins, we are offering you a direct commission into the United States Navy Nurse Corps with the rank of Lieutenant Commander. You will be assigned to a newly formed, highly specialized medical unit tasked with providing advanced trauma care to our most elite special operations forces. Your expertise in complex foreign object removal and long-term recovery will be invaluable. You will have the resources, the autonomy, and most importantly, the respect you deserve. Sarah stared at them, her mind struggling to process the enormity of the offer. A direct commission, Lieutenant Commander, a specialized unit. It was a world away from the administrative confines of Street Judes, a world she had never dared to imagine. Your salary will be commensurate with rank and experience, along with a full benefits package and a signing bonus that will more than make up for any immediate financial hardship, Admiral Thorne added, as if reading her thoughts. You will be working with the best and making a profound difference not just in individual lives, but in the security of our nation. Hot, irrepressible tears streamed down Sarah's face, but these were not tears of despair or injustice. They were tears of profound relief, of vindication, of a deep sense of purpose rediscovered. Her life, which had felt like a shattered mosaic just moments before, was suddenly being pieced back together, not just restored, but elevated. We understand this is a lot to take in, General Miller said gently, but we hope you will consider it. We need people like you, Nurse Jenkins, people who put the patient first, no matter the cost. Sarah looked at Major Hayes, who offered a faint, grateful smile. She looked at the stern faces of the Admiral and the General, at the compassionate eyes of Captain Vance. She thought of Chief of Staff Harrison's cold office and his chilling words, "You are a liability." A deep sense of peace settled over her. She was not a liability, she was an asset, she was a healer, and now she had found a place where her extraordinary skills, her relentless dedication, and her fierce compassion would not only be valued, but celebrated. "Yes," Sarah whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "Yes, I will consider it. Thank you all." Just 24 hours. In that brief span, her life had irrevocably changed. Sarah lost everything only to gain a future. She had never dared to dream of a future where her courage and skill would truly shine, recognized and honored by the very nation she had unknowingly served. The nurse who lost her job for saving a Navy SEAL was about to embark on an extraordinary new chapter. Her life was forever altered by the very act that seemed to have ruined it. Just 2 days. In that fleeting period, Sarah's life had been completely inverted. The silence that had enveloped her shattered, replaced by the clamor of media attention. A TikTok clip went viral, then national news. Nurse fired for saving Navy SEAL. Receives medal, check, a new dream job. Calls from major news outlets flooded in, but Sarah, unaccustomed to the spotlight, remained bewildered. Then she was on a stage in a packed auditorium, surrounded by military officials, the press, and the community. A naval officer approached the podium, declaring, "Today, we honor a civilian who demonstrated extraordinary courage, integrity, and precision. A nurse who saved one of our own." He emphasized that Major Hayes, a high-value operative, was alive because Sarah had acted, despite every professional and legal risk. "Sometimes doing the right thing isn't about permission, it's about character," he stated, before presenting Sarah with the Distinguished Public Service Medal, the highest honor the Navy bestows upon a civilian. As the commander placed the medal around her neck, he whispered, "You were the only line between life and death. Never forget that." Sarah stepped to the microphone, unscripted. She began softly, "I didn't plan for any of this. I was just doing my job." She explained that she was trained to help, to save lives. "When a life was on the line, I chose to act. That man is alive. He's breathing. He's going to see his family again, and that is worth it. She thanked the Navy for seeing me, for believing what happened, for restoring my name when others tried to erase it. The auditorium erupted in thunderous applause that lasted for a full minute. Sarah stood there, breathing in the moment like oxygen after drowning. Just days before, she had been escorted out of a hospital like a criminal. Now, she was a beacon of bravery and resilience. After the ceremony, Sarah became a trending topic online. Her speech went viral, and politicians and legal analysts debated her case. Nurses nationwide rallied in solidarity. She did what we are all trained to do, and she paid the price. That night, Sarah returned to her apartment. The air seemingly clearer, she replayed the ceremony, realizing she was not a victim but a symbol, proof that doing the right thing might be painful, but it was never meaningless. The camera lingered on her image, the medal gleaming, her eyes steady, her mouth set with quiet strength. The final headline spoke the truth. Sarah Cross, the nurse who chose life over fear and won. Days later, Sarah Cross stepped off a plane in Denver. It had been barely a week since the helicopters arrived, and only a few days since the world had called her a hero. But here, away from the flashing lights, she had come not to be celebrated, but to begin again.